Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on The Conversation. Now, on Tuesday, Ugandan police arrested several protesters in Kampala as anti-corruption rallies kicked off. The protesters had planned to march to Parliament, but the police banned the demonstration, citing concerns that it would compromise the country's peace and security. However, several lawyers pushed back against the ban, arguing that peaceful protests are constitutionally protected. Now, despite this, a heavy police presence remains in various parts of the city, with several roads blocked off. Now, the protesters are actually demanding the resignation of Parliament Speaker Anite, who was sanctioned by the US and Britain for alleged corruption, as well as 4 bank bench commissioners implicated in a multi-million corruption scandal. And they also have other demands. Now, I have joining me in the studio to speak on this is Deborah Esther. She's a lawyer from Kampala, Uganda. Hello, Deborah. Thank you so much for joining me at this time. Deborah, can you hear me? All right. We also have joining us Sam Wanda. He's also a legal practitioner from Kampala, Uganda. Hello, Sam. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good evening, and I'm happy to be here this evening.
All right, Sam, let's quickly start with some of the basics. What are some of the possible scenarios for how the protests, evolved and even escalated? We're aware that the president had, sent a warning that the protests should not hold, and even police have actually warned against the protests. So please go ahead and share with us why or how the protest evolved or escalated.
Thank you so much. The protests happened yesterday. As anticipated, people were marching against graft and corruption. People turned out in their numbers from several locations. And we had those who were moving alone, those who were moving in their groups. But above all, the protests were peaceful. I think for the first time in our history, we had protests where we are not seeing people burning tires, we are not seeing people destroying property, we are not seeing people looting any other's property. So we had a very peaceful protest. However, the security agencies did not let it end peacefully. We've had several arrests. We are not sure of the number of people arrested. But we anticipate there could be of about 100. As of today evening, we have 71 people who have been charged in the courts and remanded into Tulizira prison with an offense of common nuisance.
All right. Speaking of the police not allowing the protests to be peaceful, what are your thoughts on how they responded to the protests? Did the president's warning to protesters, that they were playing with fire, embolden the police to make these arrests?
Definitely, their response was not a constitutional one. We still term them as unconstitutional and illegal arrests. And we believe these were because of the command from the president to arrest anyone who dare demonstrates, even those who are glaringly on the face of it are peaceful. There has been a video circulating around where there was a lone protest by a single person. Even that person was arrested and has equally been charged with being a common nuisance. And also, what I can say is that the protests and the arrests against the protesters were not entirely in charge by the police. They were actually in charge by the Special Forces Command, which is an allied force which is in charge with guarding the president and the first family. And yesterday afternoon, once people were arrested, the lawyers marched to the central police station to access the clients, but we were denied access. And in that process, we actually saw the commander of the Special Forces unit and his deputy coming to the police station. And it's until then that he left that actually we even got information of whether the suspects will be produced in court or not.
Okay, now the lawyers marched on one hand, but what about the opposition parties, and civil society organizations that were accused of instigating the protests. How have they reacted to these arrests?
As I said previously on this show, these protests were partyless, they were faceless, and they were for all the citizens.
Okay.
I can say without any fear of contradiction that we've not seen political leaders into these protests, and what we've seen is their condemnation on the arrests yesterday into the parliament, where the leader of opposition castigated government and the Minister of Internal Affairs to make a statement on the various arrests of people who are marching peacefully. We've had a few non-government organizations, but these are local government organizations and not necessarily foreign organizations, which the president accused of instigating these protests. And these organizations have been coming majorly to help with the welfare of the arrested people. As you all know, when they were arrested, they were denied access to even lawyers and even their relatives. But these local organizations came in to see if they can get something to eat before they could be taken onto the bus to the prisons, and also to see if they can get them a few things to use like soap, slippers, Vaseline, among other things. So the protests, as we said earlier, they were partyless. There was no any party leader in the protests, and none has even come out today to own up the protests. So the protests are citizen-led, as earlier indicated.
Okay, thank you for that, Sam. Now, I'm being told that Deborah Esther has reconnected with us. Hello, Deborah, if you can hear me. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Deborah is also a lawyer. So, Deborah, quickly, let's talk about fundamental human rights right now. Now, considering the track record of human rights in Uganda, do you think that the threats, the warnings, and also the arrests by the authorities are a form of intimidation or harassment by the government, to silence dissenting voices?
Well, concerning that being a form of harassment, given every state, it chooses to protect the citizens of the country. The history of the Ugandan government when it comes to controlling protests has been a bit firm, and therefore, because of the violence that has been in previous activisms or demonstrations, the government generally has a firm hand when it comes to this. However, when it comes to the rights of the people, we have had two cases so far, one in 2005 that did uphold this right, this constitutional right, as is in Article 29(1) of the Constitutional Republic of Uganda, that allows us to demonstrate. And we've had the Constitutional Court uphold this right on two occasions, even when there was an attempt to have the police prohibit the right to demonstration. It was made absolutely clear that the police has no right to prohibit this, but it only has a mandate to control the protests and ensure that they do not get out of hand. Now,
so
the reaction of the government,
reason, if they were told not
yesterday when the
to make any arrest, what was the exact reason for arresting these people? Because we did hear that a TV presenter, some youth leaders, and over 60 people were detained.
Sorry, beg your pardon?
I was actually speaking to Deborah. I don't know if she heard me, but Sam, you can actually go ahead since
the police made a statement in the press around the 18th of July. Yes, on the 18th of July, that stated that they had insight that this protest was to become violent, and that is what they used to justify the arrests that happened yesterday and the heavy military deployment that occurred in Uganda.
All right, so let's go ahead and hear from you. The same question I asked about, silencing dissenting voices and human rights abuse in Uganda. Sam.
As we've said prior, We had spent the silencing, we had spent the human rights abuses, and it's unfortunate that even the courts where we have officers are condoning such abuses. I will give you an example that yesterday we had the suspects being brought to court at about 5:30 p.m. And they were charged at about 18 hours p.m. when courts are supposed to be not working, they're supposed to be closed. And we never got even an opportunity to apply for their bail. And the reason the judicial officers were giving was that it's already late, and thereafter entertaining a bail application for all those people would mean that court will close late in the night. Of course, we disagree with that. A mere fact that even the courts can entertain to register these cases that late, then they are condoning the acts of the police on abusing the rights of these people. One, right to liberty, but also right to apply for bail. We had people who were not produced in court yesterday, and they have been only produced in court today evening at 17 hours East African time. Now that is another violation. If they were arrested yesterday, the police had enough time to produce them in court early enough than producing them late in the evening. And it's laughable. The excuse they gave why they couldn't entertain their bail application is because the magistrate who was at the station did not have the jurisdiction, that the files had not been allocated to any judicial officer to handle them. But here we have someone who is entertaining the plea taking of these accused persons. So there have been several human rights violations, and we believe these all are intended. Their purpose is to ensure that they gag the protesters so that tomorrow, whoever thinks that they can march, they can demonstrate peacefully, they will be treated inhumanely like the ones who have been arrested before.
All right, let's move on to Deborah, and I hope she can actually hear me now. Will the government's response to the protests affect its reputation and legitimacy in the eyes of Ugandans? There seems to be a serious delay connecting with Esther. But Sam, if you heard my question, or do I need to repeat it?
Please just repeat it just one more time.
Oh, okay. So what I said is, will the government's response to the protests, that's everything that has happened, from before the protest started up until, the bail of those who are arrested, will it affect its reputation and legitimacy, in the eyes of Ugandans?
Yes, it will affect its legitimacy, its reputation in the eyes of the Ugandans. Reasons are very simple. What the Ugandans are doing, the people who are on the streets, they are not saying that they want to overtake anyone, they want to overthrow anyone. What they are saying is that whoever is implicated in any corruption scandal should step aside, or they should resign, and the investigation should take its course. Now, a government which wants legitimacy, a government which is willing to fight corruption, then should be in protecting the rights of these people who are demonstrating, not to abuse them. Now, we've been in a scenario where the president has issued stern warnings. We've been in a scenario where the police has said they do not tamper. And indeed, they have executed what they promised, the scares they issued on Saturday, on Sunday, on Monday. They have gone ahead and arrested and detained people, send them on remand in prison. This does not bring legitimacy in any way. And we are certain even those who are now out are also wondering whether indeed the government stance on fighting corruption is real, or time immemorial, it's been a comedy show where they're just trying to show the public, the international community, that we are against corruption and we do not support it. To us, actually, this is a show that the government is the most beneficiary into the corruption scandals into this country.
All right, now speaking of corruption, Sam, now it's actually a major issue in Uganda, and with several high-profile scandals involving public officials. Now the country is actually ranked 141 out of 180 countries on Transparency International's Corruption Index. What are some of the possible long-term solutions to, addressing the issue of corruption in Uganda?
Thank you so much. Corruption in Uganda will only be addressed, and if it's a long-term solution to address it, one, it needs the will of the people, and then the will of their leaders. Now, we've had a scenario where we've had the same leaders into most of these positions time over time, and the same leaders have been implicated in scandals over and over and over. Now, I think it's time for the citizens to stand up and say enough is enough. One, do not bring back these leaders into these political positions, and also such protests, such demonstrations, for as long as they are peaceful, should go ahead until these leaders realize that they no longer have the legitimacy, until they realize that they are no longer needed into these public offices, and then they can resign. Or the president, as he has always said, is against corruption. We implore him to use all the necessary available means legally to curb corruption. We have several state agencies. We have the Inspectorate of Government. We have the State House Anti-Corruption Unit. Yes, a few weeks ago, he started up another unit of fighting corruption within the Uganda Revenue Authority. We have another unit fighting corruption from investors. We've had a scenario where people are fleecing investors coming to Uganda, lying them that they're taking the president, and they never do that. So we have another unit. We have Parliament, which has oversight committees, which are meant to interrogate other bodies of government where there is misuse of funds. We have the Auditor General. The president now has to make sure that all these institutions are independent and they are carrying out their mandate independently to bring whoever has been mentioned in corruption scandals to book by investigating, and if they are found culpable, to be produced in the courts. And once they are produced in the courts, we hope that the courts can stand firm and exercise their mandate independently as per the Constitution dictates.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for taking time out to speak to us. So we had on this particular story, on this particular issue, Deborah, Esther, and Sam, Wanda, both legal practitioners in Kampala, Uganda. Thank you so much once again.
All right, thank you too.
With that, we've come to the end of conversation. Thank you so much for watching and taking time out to stay glued to your TV set. We'll be back again some other time. Thank you. I'm Darshan Usman. Take care.